Alright, welcome guys. Today we're looking at Support Material 9, Personal Financial Management, FIN2602. So Unit 9 is looking at buying a franchise. Okay, so previously we spoke about buying a business, right, and starting a business. Now we're looking at buying a franchise. Okay, so in this particular module, we're going to be looking at defining the concepts. Okay, so what is a franchise? What is a franchisor? What is the franchisee? Right, and what is the franchise package? Okay, we'll also look at evaluating the franchise opportunity, okay, and we'll look at how to finance a franchise. Okay, so this particular module is looking at taking the business to that next step, okay, by converting it perhaps into a franchise, or maybe starting a business by buying an existing franchise. Okay, so there's always two options that we need to consider when it comes to a franchise. Right, so the first bit is, what popular business franchises are you familiar with? Okay, well, before we can look at the popular business franchises, we need to think about that word franchise and what does it actually mean. Okay, well, if you look at a business, right, remember a business is very unique. It offers a specific product or service. Okay, when businesses grow, they then convert into a franchise. Why? Well, they want more and more customers to be serviced, okay, or to be exposed to that particular product. Right, so businesses then expand and they then take on other entrepreneurs that are willing, okay, to manage that particular business on behalf of that bigger brand. Okay, so a franchise is a business, okay, that gets support from like a head office or the franchisor, right, or the decision makers generally, okay, and the franchisor or the head office, okay, would then be responsible for managing that brand, okay, doing that advertising and so on. Right, so if you look at our country and some of the popular businesses that we see on a day-to-day basis, and there's lots, a lot of them you'll see generally in the food industry, okay, so we've got all sorts of companies like Nando's, okay, McDonald's, KFC, and the list goes on, right? There are so many very popular franchises out there. Okay, if I think about new franchises that have opened recently, right? Starbucks has recently come to South Africa, and they obviously opened up their first store, and now they've grown and they're opening up more stores throughout the country, right? So Starbucks is obviously very popular coffee, let's say barista, okay, in terms of offering drinks, okay, coffee, tea, and all sorts of, let's say, beverages, okay, for that particular industry, okay, in the coffee industry, right? So they're not really a restaurant. They do offer certain food items, okay, but they're generally more focused on that that quick consuming for that customer that wants goods quickly in terms of a break, okay, in terms of coffee and tea and so on. Okay, it's more like recreational in a way. Okay, so what popular business franchises are there? All right, we spoke about some food franchises. There's also other types of franchises. Okay, if we look at things like tire manufacturers, okay, and they obviously have different dealers that offer their particular products. Okay, so if I think of let's say tire franchises, okay, so your Super Quick, your Tiger Wheel and Tire, right, those are all different franchises. Okay, so obviously managers or entrepreneurs would buy the rights, okay, to run that particular business on the back of the brand, okay, Tiger Wheel and Tire or Super Quick or whatever the case might be, okay, be it pizza maybe, so your Romans or your Debonaires, right, fast food, maybe your Steers, all right, or McDonald's, KFC, all those big names. Right, so did you know that franchising actually dates all the way back to 200 BC, okay, when Las Casas actually developed a chain store concept to distribute food throughout China. Okay, remember, countries are very big, okay, so it's difficult to keep that consistency in terms of products and services that are being offered. Okay, so franchise is a very strict way of doing business. Why? All the franchises, it doesn't matter where we are. Okay, we can be in Cape Town, Joburg, Pretoria, wherever in the country. Okay, if we go to a particular franchise, okay, let's say Starbucks or KFC or McDonald's, okay, one of the bigger global franchises, we would expect to receive the same product at all those stores. Okay, so if we're looking for a cup of coffee, if we're looking for a burger, or we're looking for some fried chicken, it doesn't matter where we go, the consistency should be the same. Okay, meaning wherever we go, if we buy a product in a particular place, okay, we should be getting the same item. Right, and that's what a franchise is. It's taking that business model that works and giving it to other people to expand the brand, okay, or the business. Right, so there's a note about the definition. Okay, so obviously in your textbook, it's very theoretical, okay, and they do give you all the theory behind what a franchise is, what a franchisor, and so on. Okay, what's important is obviously knowing what a franchise is. Okay, so the definition is a franchise is a business relationship based on an already made business formula with constant support from the franchisor. Okay, because remember, the franchisor has established this franchise. Okay, they've established this business that works. Okay, be it fried chicken, be it burgers, be it coffee, whatever the case might be. Right, but they've got a formula that works. They know exactly how to market and advertise the product. They know what products are going to be selling. They know how to train and provide staff. Right, and they have that formula that works. Right, so in order to grow the business, they're going to now give other individuals the opportunity to run that business, right, as a franchise, okay, following the specific rules in terms of the business formula that has been created by the franchisor. Right, so a franchise package is broadly consisting of the following. Okay, there's definitely an agreement. Why? Well, this is a contract. Okay, there's a legal document that needs to be in place for people to follow the correct rules and principles. Okay, so obviously we need to sign the document, the contract, in order to be part of the brand, okay, or the business model in terms of the formula, okay, or allowing us to get the formula, okay, in order to operate as a separate entity, okay, i.e. a franchise from the franchisor. Right, the operating procedures manual, okay, OPM, right, those give you the very, very specific detail in terms of what you can and can't do. Okay, and how do you do certain things? So what's the bookkeeping system like? Okay, how do we train staff? Where do we go for training? Okay, normally the franchisor would often provide the training for the staff that will be working in that particular franchise. Okay, and then we've got a note there about training aspects as well. Right, and there could be others as well. There could be marketing as well. There could be certain fees that need to be paid off, paid off to the franchisor. Okay, so there's a lot that needs to be considered here. Okay, most important is obviously the contract, the rules, right, and how we do business. Okay, that needs to be clearly outlined in the franchise package. Okay, some franchise packages can be, let's say, more comprehensive. Okay, there could be a lot more additional services that you could maybe utilize to help you run the business. Alright, so there's a relationship. We've established that. Okay, a franchise needs a franchisor, okay, and we need a franchisee. Right, so what is the franchisor? Well, the franchisor is the owner of the rights to the actual business. Okay, remember that formula we spoke about? Right, so the franchisor is going to be responsible, okay, for the actual overall business. Okay, the owner of the rights. Entrepreneurs can buy a franchise and they invest in the franchisor's existing enterprise. Okay, so what would they be called? The franchisee. Okay, so franchisees are people holding the rights, okay, to a business from the franchisor. Right, you also get a master franchisor. Okay, so this diagram over here tries to show that, okay, in terms of a franchisor offering support to master franchisees, okay, which then offers support to other franchisees. Okay, so the franchisee is obviously the person holding the rights, okay, to run a particular business. All right, so a franchisor who gives an individual company a geographical area in which to sell franchises and develop them at a rate set by the development schedule. Okay, so we're looking at expansion, obviously, growing the business further by creating more separate, let's say, business centers that offer the same products and services. Alright, there's a note about the franchisee. Okay, a franchisee is the person who owns the right to purchase and run the business under the name of the franchisor. Okay, I think we've established that already. Okay, we know the franchisee needs to follow the rules and regulations in place as outlined by the agreement, okay, that both have agreed on. Right, are there any guarantees when purchasing a franchise? Right. Well, you can say yes and no for that particular question. Right. If you think about it, a franchisee is what? Okay, is the owner of the right to that particular business. They determine what product and services are going to be sold and how it's going to be done and all the steps and processes and systems in place in order to run a successful business. Right, so are there guarantees? Well, there could be some. Right, the franchisor could possibly offer, let's say, marketing and advertising. Right, is the franchisee guaranteed anything? Well, again, it could be yes or no. Okay, if you're buying a very popular franchise, well, the guarantee, inverted commas, could be it's an established brand. Okay, if people know that particular product or service, they're more likely to come to your business to purchase it. Now, I mean, think about it. If we started a burger business and we called it, let's just call it burger business, right? Does anyone know the product or service from our particular business? No. Okay, but if we were to create a McDonald's, right, people know what sort of product they're going to be getting, okay, if they come to a McDonald's, right? And that could be a franchise, right, i.e. a business, okay, run by a franchisee which follows the same rules as the franchisor. Okay, remember McDonald's is international. Okay, and so a lot of the other other franchises. Okay. Right, so they are and they can be, okay, there could be guarantees, right, but they're limited as well, right? It all depends on the contract. All right, there are two types of franchisees: single unit franchisees and master franchisees. Okay, so we actually saw it earlier. Okay, the diagram spoke about a master franchisee, right? Someone who has rights to hold more franchises, okay, in a specific geographical location. Okay, so single unit would be, well, if I take out a franchise agreement, okay, I'm only going to have a single unit, meaning I can only create that particular product or service under the brand of the franchisor in a specific location. Right, so let's look at development. Let's look at trying to create more opportunity, okay, as well in terms of growth. Right, I've given you a summary here. Okay, the textbook's quite detailed in terms of giving you lots of the background information. Okay, they talk about the franchise package in a lot of detail. Right, how do we train our staff? What training is required? Obviously, we need initial training. We might need training at a later stage. Okay, it all forms part of the package. Okay, there might be systems that need to be in place. Okay, that are very specific because obviously the franchisor needs to consolidate all this information together to get information in order to make decisions. Right, so what expectations are there between the franchisor and the franchisee? Well, there's a few. If we're looking at the franchisor, okay, the franchisor, remember, sets the rules. Right, so the franchisee should follow the franchise concept in detail. Okay, that's the expectation. Okay, remember the franchisor wants to control, okay, wants to manage, right, all of those different businesses. Okay, they need to keep all the products and services the same, right? The franchisees need to meet the standards, okay, and the ethics, right? The franchisees also need to participate in all the promotions. Okay, so you can't have one store running with a special and another not, okay, or a special promotion. Okay. There needs to be honesty and integrity from the franchisees. Okay, that's the franchisor's expectation. Okay, that's what they're requiring from the franchisee. If we look at the other side of things, the franchisee. Remember, their expectation is help and assistance. Right, so they want the franchisor to give them all that information. They want professional help. Okay, they want integrity, obviously, from the franchisor. They want that proven formula that works. Right, so the franchisee also wants sufficient training. Okay, they want the operational manual. All right, it needs to be comprehensive enough. So how do I approach the different situations? How do I do this? How do I do that? Okay, they obviously need continuous support. Right, they need to be communicated with. There needs to be ideas. There needs to be different, let's say, campaigns that they obviously run, right, in terms of trying to keep the brand fresh, okay, and continue to grow. Okay, because remember, the more valuable the brand, the more valuable the franchise. Okay, the franchisee obviously has that expectation from the franchisor. They want the franchisor to focus on growing that brand even further. Alright guys, and then I've got a note here about the franchise package. Okay, remember the package is a very specific document. Okay, it contains all the elements of the franchise, so the agreement, the manual, and anything relating to the trainer. Okay, so we can train the owner. Okay, we can train different consultants, okay, or salespeople. We can train in terms of systems. Right, so all of that needs to be outlined in the package. Okay, when I buy a franchise, I need to know exactly what products, in terms of product inverted commas, that I'm going to be getting from the franchisor. Okay, because when buying a franchise, you're actually buying someone else's business formula, okay, or someone else's business model. All right, and you've got to then implement that to make it work for you as the entrepreneur. Right, so I want you guys to think about some advantages and disadvantages of franchising. Okay, so I've given you blocks here, 4 blocks to look at some of the positive and negative points for each of these different individuals, okay, or for companies, the franchisee and the franchisor. Right, so stop the video for now, okay, take a few minutes now to try fill in that. Alright guys, so I hope you had a chance, okay, to think about some of the advantages, some of the disadvantages for the franchisee, and then the same thing for the franchisor. Okay, so let's start with some advantages to the franchisee. Okay, remember, who is the franchisee? The franchisee is the person or individual or entrepreneur, okay, who has purchased a business formula from the franchisor, okay, in terms of owning a part of the franchise. Right, so what advantages are there? Well, if we think about it, in terms of risk, is there more or less risk? There's actually less risk. Why? Because we're buying someone else's proven formula that works. Okay, we know they've created a business that works, that's established, that might have 1 or 2 branches or 1 or 2 franchises. Okay, so the advantage is you're buying a proven formula, okay, that works. There'll be support. That's also important. Okay, there'll be communication from the franchisor. Okay, so it's not like you're running a business all on your own. Okay, you've got the help and the assistance from the franchisor. Right, if we look at some of the disadvantages, okay, obviously there's a lack of creativity. Right, as a franchisee, you can't digress from what you've signed in terms of the contract. Okay, so the burger that you're going to have to make is going to be the burger that you're going to have to make. There can't be any alterations or changes or anything like that. Alright, so it's very, very strict in terms of the product or service that you're offering. Right, so as a franchisee, a disadvantage would be, well, the burgers that I'm going to be making are going to be very, very specific. And I can't change or alter those. Right, unless we get new items to put on the menu, right, those are the only items we're going to have to create. Okay, so there could be a lack of independence as well, okay, because everything needs to go through the franchisor, okay, because you're following their set of rules. Right, advantages for a franchisor. Okay, probably biggest advantage would be expansion. Okay, so growing the business. Right, think about how costly it would be for a business to create more and more and more branches. Okay, it would be very costly, right, and very risky as well. Right, so the franchisor would perhaps consider creating a franchise that they could sell to other individuals for them to take on the risk. Okay, so take on the risk in terms of those franchisees would be investing their capital, their time, their resources in growing your franchise, okay, as the franchisor. Right, there could be other advantages like maybe branding, okay, in terms of getting more and more people part of the business. Okay, so obviously that's exposure. Right, so as a franchisor, an advantage would be exposure. Okay, so not only growth in terms of physical bricks and mortar or businesses popping up in terms of sales. Okay, it's also about that exposure. Okay, a disadvantage on that could be, well, people not following the rules. Okay, you might have one particular franchise which doesn't create a product or service up to standard. Okay, and that creates a risk. Okay, because remember, if one branch is offering a bad product or service, that could filter through to the entire business, right? And that's a very, 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 very big risk in terms of reputational risk. Okay, franchisors need to trust their franchisees, and that's why there's obviously an application that needs to go through in terms of the characteristics, who they are, where they're from, what they want to achieve, and so on. Okay, so disadvantage is definitely risk in terms of not following the rules, maybe certain inconsistencies. Okay, there could also be maybe dilution of the brand, okay, because now you're giving other people ownership of it rather than you as the franchisor or the entrepreneur owning all of it. Okay, that could also be maybe a profit share type of disadvantage. Okay, so before profits were all kept by the business, now some of the profits are given to the franchisee. Okay, so it all depends on how you view it. Okay, there are advantages and disadvantages. Okay, there always is. Alright guys, is franchising for you? Okay, that's one of the biggest questions that we need to look at in terms of personal financial planning. Okay, remember personal financial planning, what is the goal? It's to achieve that long-term financial independence. Okay, and to try to achieve that financial independence as soon as possible as well. Okay, so hopefully it isn't too long-term. Right, so when looking at checklists, right, remember a franchise can be a way to create a future in terms of financial independence. Right, but we first need to establish is franchising for you. Okay, so is it for you? Well, that's a personal choice. Right, some people would be happy, okay, to follow a proven formula. Other individuals require more diversity or more creativity, okay, or freedom to express themselves in terms of business. Right, it all depends. Okay, so some of the points that we need to look at here, and this obviously gets taken through the textbook in a lot more detail, right, is determine the type of franchise. Okay, so what franchise are you going to be considering? Okay, so for example, I'm not going to be buying a franchise creating burgers if I don't enjoy burgers. Okay, or I'm not going to be buying a franchise in tires, tire dealer, okay, if I don't have any interest or let's say passion for that particular enterprise, okay, or industry. Okay, think about a clothing franchise as well. Okay, I mean, we spoke about franchise in terms of food and other. Okay, there could be others. So a franchise in terms of technology. Okay, so owning maybe a cell phone store, right, or a repair store, okay, or a clothing store. It could be anything, right? As long as it's a proven business formula, you could possibly turn that into a franchise. Okay, so you need to determine what type of franchise are you interested in, okay? And then you need to evaluate the franchisor. Okay, so what is their history? How long have they been around? Okay, what's the current situation? Okay, so is this business succeeding? What are the future prospects? So where do we see this going? Okay, obviously we spoke about Starbucks earlier. Okay, very, very popular in America, right? Recently come to South Africa. Okay, the future prospects could be great, right? Or it could be the opposite. Okay, so we need to establish the franchisor. How good is their reputation? Okay, how much information is out there? Are there any restrictions? Okay, all sorts of, let's say, background information that needs to be considered when evaluating the franchisor, the person giving you those ideas, okay, to establish the business. Okay, we then need to look at assessing the business proposition. Right, so how good is this actual opportunity? How much do we need to invest as the entrepreneur, and how soon are we going to get a return on investment? Okay, because there's no point building a business for someone else's franchisor, okay, or someone else in terms of the franchisor, in terms of their franchise, all right, if it doesn't benefit the entrepreneur as well, in terms of the franchisee. Okay, so we need to assess the business proposition. Okay, what are they proposing? Okay, are we happy to invest the million, okay, the 2-3 million, depending on what type of franchise we're starting. Right, information can obviously be found from the Franchise Association of Southern Africa. Okay, that they obviously manage franchises in Southern Africa. Okay, all of the franchises that are in this particular region obviously need to be managed, okay, controlled, right? Because remember, a franchisor obviously needs to cater for the franchisee's needs as well. Right, and then we've got the agreement and we've got disclosure. Okay, also something for you to consider. Okay, then we've got a note here, checklist for the franchisor. Right, so what must we do? Okay, earlier we spoke about an application process. That's key. You can't give anyone the business formula. Okay, you need to give people that you trust. And the only way we can establish trust is by getting information. Right, so the application process is focusing on that. Okay, getting information from the franchisee in order to screen them and to identify maybe a group of franchisees that would be willing to train and to give the opportunity to in terms of creating a branch, okay, or a new business center in terms of the franchise. Right, financing the franchise. Who's going to invest? Okay, does the franchisor and the franchisee invest? Do they share costs? Right, what income, what sources of funding are we going to have? Okay, franchising we know is the easiest way to expand a business. Right, but there also needs to be regulation, okay, because it's growth. Right, so if there is growth can be very rapid. Okay, growth needs to be controlled as well. Right, and the opportunities need to be managed. And we've got global franchising as well. Something to consider when companies get very, 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 very big. Okay, when they start operating in other countries as well. Right, so when is the best time for considering to franchise a business? Right, well, it all depends. Right, we know we need some established business formula or track record. Okay, we need to have systems in place. Okay, so generally more mature companies would be looking at franchising purely because they've grown to a level where they need to take the next step. And the next step is expansion. Okay, exposure. Alright guys, and that's the end of this particular module.